We're good?
I think I'm on.
It says 1, 2.
Yeah, we're ready.
Let's see. It's all right?
Yeah, that's good. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, at the Cusp of Freedom, where we share our perspective on why and how we became digital nomads so you can resonate and take it with you and apply it in your life. Today I have a very special guest. I'll let him introduce himself so he can tell you his name, where he's from, and what he does as a digital nomad.
You want me to look at you or the camera?
Both, I guess. I don't know.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me on. First podcast experience. My name is Mike Gillespie. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska originally. We're recording this in Oaxaca City, where I've lived kind of off and on for the last 3 years. So I'm not necessarily as much of a nomad, I guess. I do bounce around a little bit, but this has kind of been a home away from home for the last couple of years. So I work for a climate tech company based in the U.S. I've had two different jobs on it, like as part of this digital nomad experience over the past 3 years. Both of them have been completely remote, and yeah, just feel very grateful for the opportunity to be able to travel the world and live outside of the U.S. while still working for a U.S. company.
Amazing. Yeah, let's dive in a little bit about how and why you got here.
Yeah.
When you were a kid growing up, did your parents instill travel in you at all, or?
Not really. I guess we took a couple. I guess the only international vacation I took was in high school. We went to Costa Rica one time. Honestly, though, I was like kind of like hesitant to go on that trip because I was like I liked my hometown.
Comfortable?
I was pretty comfortable. Yeah, it was more of just like I didn't want to get out of my routine, and it's funny you ask about being like a kid because I never had the urge to travel. I never really knew anybody that traveled a lot, other than like like the basic tourist locations, Europe on vacation, Mexico, the beaches, right? But I love geography. I really liked like spinning the globe and learning about the different countries in the world. But it's weird because that wasn't like connected to a desire to travel really. It was just like more of like an academic interest,
Yeah.
I won the geography bee in 7th grade, and I went to like the state, and I really got into like studying the countries of Africa and in Asia, and but honestly, like I never was. I remember my Spanish teacher even was really pushing study abroad on us in high school, and saying like, when you get to college, like you have to study abroad. It changed my life, and I really just like wasn't even thinking about it. It wasn't on my radar. I was like, yeah, like that's something other people do. I think I just didn't have like an example of somebody I knew close to me that could make it real enough for me to actually want to pursue myself. So honestly, not a whole lot.
No, you said a lot of interesting things, and I think that what you said is basically the reason why 2/3 of Americans don't have passports. Whether they're intrigued about their environments or not, they're usually not they're not going to take that initiative to do it themselves unless they have someone close to them that have done it and seen transformative things.
It's funny you say that because I have a friend actually from the DRC. He was a refugee, came here 5 years ago.
Was the Dominican Republic?
Of Congo, yeah. He came to the U.S. 5 years ago, and he was always saying that to me. He was like, I'm so mad because like all these Americans, they have this American, like the opportunity for American passport, and they don't even apply for it. They don't even use it.
Yeah.
He was like, as soon as I become an American citizen, I'm about to be gone. Like I'm about to travel the world. And he did. He literally got his citizenship this summer, and he flew to Colombia 2 days later, I'm pretty sure, and backpacked up from Colombia up through Mexico, and actually visited me when I was in Puebla nearby, and visited me. And so, yeah, I mean, like 2 days into having a U.S. passport, he was taking advantage of it, but people don't.
Yeah, I mean, in perspective, I'm from Cameroon, born and raised.
Yeah.
And when I got my citizenship, I did the same thing. Like I left immediately, like the same month. I didn't even waste any time.
Yeah.
But anyways, when you were growing up, it seems like you had a little bit of travel experience in like your what's publicized for people to go in America, like the Caribbeans or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. Did that travel experience shape your perspective at all, or was it more like you didn't really pay attention because you were young then?
I think honestly, like you said, the only examples of travel that I had was the kind of the basic stereotypical stay at a nice hotel, lay on the beach sort of travel.
I see.
And that never appealed to me, and it still doesn't. And so I think I associated, now that I'm actually thinking this through, I think I associated that's what travel is.
Yes. Oh,
and
I see.
I don't want that for
See,
myself.
see.
And that's why I was so hesitant, I think, to go to Costa Rica or to think about studying abroad, because I was like, yeah, that doesn't appeal to me.
I see. I see.
And so I think that was really it. I think once I was given the opportunity for the first time to travel like I travel, and I didn't know how I like to travel. I discovered it. It was when I studied abroad in college. Ultimately, I did decide to study abroad. I can talk about why I ended up doing that. But it was in Cape Town, South Africa, and that was the first time where I was on my own. I had the opportunity to kind of like shape what travel meant to me, and it was completely different from anyone else that I'd seen in the past. I made it work for me, and I guess I've been traveling like that ever since, pretty much.
Yeah, it sounds like that first trip was very different than what you presumed it would be as a personal experience.
Yeah.
But when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grow up? When you grew up?
I didn't really. I mean, so I was always like a big sports fan,
Yeah.
and I always wanted to. I don't think I was like bold enough as a little kid to like even dream about being a professional sports player. So like when people asked me as a kid, I would say like I wanted to be like a physical therapist or something, just because I wanted to be like around sports, but like I wasn't audacious enough to actually dream of
Competing.
of like being at that top level.
Interesting.
So it was kind of like a sad dream, to be honest. Like it wasn't actually my dream. It was just the thing that I said because I didn't really have another answer. Like again, I didn't have really anybody that gave me an example of what
What do we should dream for?
I guess that, like, obviously I've got I think that's it.
So when you went to college and you said you pursued sustainability engineering. At what age did you decide that you'd go into college? And did you know what you were going to college for, or did you like decide?
So the sustainability thing actually came after I studied abroad. So I came into college still kind of on that like halfway committal to physical therapy route. And so I actually decided I was going to study abroad like the first week of college. Because what I did was I went to a college that was really close to my high school in my hometown. It was kind of the safe option. My mom actually worked there, and so I got super grateful. Had a great deal to go there, and wasn't paying tuition because of that.
Nice.
But as soon as I got there, I was like, ooh, this is really familiar and really comfortable, and I don't necessarily know if this is what I want my college experience to be. And so I had a friend that was like, hey, I'm going to check out this study abroad fair. And then literally after I said my Spanish teacher in high school was always pushing study abroad, and I always like rejected it. Yeah. And that first time he said that, I was like, that might not be a bad idea. Like I'm kind of looking for a way out. Like I'm looking for like
an escape.
Yeah. So I was like, that's not a bad idea actually. And so he went to it, and I followed him. And I remember I went around to the different booths, and I was kind of checking them all out. And then the last booth at the very end was the Cape Town one. And I'm kind of like a pretty rational person most of the time. Like I think through my decisions very carefully, and I don't necessarily rely a whole lot on intuition.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I just went up to that booth. They gave me the pamphlet. They started telling me about it, and I was like, sold.
This is it, yeah.
Like I literally woke up that morning, not even study abroad on my radar at all, and I walked out of that saying, I'm definitely going to do this. And I texted my parents, and I texted a couple of close friends, hey, just so you know, I'm going to study abroad in Cape Town, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't like lose. Yeah, I wanted to have that accountability that I spoke it into existence. I told somebody about it.
Facts.
because I knew like, again, like I didn't really know anybody that had studied abroad or have like a whole lot of association with people that had traveled. And so I knew I might switch up, like that passion that was ignited
Yeah.
in that study abroad session might have fallen off. So I wanted to have that accountability and ended up doing it. Yeah.
Interesting. Two questions. Do you think you would have been here today if you hadn't taken that opportunity to go study abroad? And two, when you went to study abroad, what was your key takeaway from that experience? Um, was it your, I don't know, yeah, what was your key
Yeah.
takeaway? I don't want to say.
So to the first question, I would say no. I think that I don't know where I would be. I think I probably, if I hadn't taken that experience, I would have ended up finding another experience because I think I would have finally realized like this is kind of part of who I am and part of my identity, and I hopefully something else would have come along. I don't know what my life would look like if it didn't, because obviously it's changed so much
You know,
since that original state prior. And in terms of like the biggest takeaway, there's so many micro takeaways, I would say, but the macro takeaway was just it opened up so many possibilities for how I could live my life. I grew up in a mid-sized city in the Midwest. Pretty much everybody kind of follows a traditional career path.
yeah,
They stay in the same city at most. So I'm from Omaha, so that maybe they go to Denver or St. Louis or Minneapolis or Kansas City,
yeah,
like on the Chicago, on the cities around it.
yeah,
But they're all kind of the same, like they've got the same vibe. And because that was what surrounded me, that was the only vision I had for my life. It
Yeah.
was like, if I work really hard in school, then I'll get a middle class job. I'll
You get the
save
American-
up,
Yeah,
ultimately get a house, get a family.
yeah,
And I just never was happy with that lifestyle. Like I always just dreaded it. I was always just thinking like, oh man, I need to figure something else out before that happens. And I was always worried. Because I was like counting down the years. I was like, oh man, it's like
Is this it?
six more years until I got to do this. And so I was always looking for a way out. But I never really like knew other options,
yeah,
Go to Cape Town, go to South Africa. All of a sudden I see people my age and they've got their own set of pressures, but they're completely different than mine,
Yeah.
right? So they've got their own kind of boundaries that are keeping them in a certain area,
Yeah.
but it's completely different. And I just realized like all this like social pressure and the kind of all of this anxiety that we feel to fit a certain mold, it's all kind of fake. And it made me realize, what if I went to another city? I bet I would learn a bunch more. What if I went to a different culture? I bet I would see this from a different angle. And
Yeah.
really, it just made me feel so much freer, because I finally was like, oh wow, I made a decision to live in Cape Town for 5 months, and it like worked out.
Yeah.
Like, what's stopping me from doing this again and again and again? And maybe I'm not limited by the people that are around me, or maybe I'm not limited by what the city that I grew up in. Maybe I can create my own life and
Facts.
create something that's actually unique to me, rather than just like kind of committing to a lifestyle that I'm really not that excited about.
Wow, bro, you said so. Oh, you dropped so many gems. I can't even add to what you said, because I think you've made so much sense. So when you came back from Cape Town, you went into college and you studied sustainability engineering. You said you were doing physiotherapy, before you left, right?
Yeah.
So what made you switch after that that field trip to Cape Town?
Yeah, it was an opportunity that I had. So it was actually a service learning program. So it was 3 days in the classroom and 2 days at some sort of service in the community.
Okay.
And my service was actually at a school. I was teaching 5th grade math, and at that school, it's kind of a long story, but the guy I was working with, he was really passionate about gardening. There was a giant plot of land at the school that was not being used because they didn't have the finances to be able to actually utilize it. I noticed also like kids were eating junk food, like no vegetables, no fruits in their lunches and stuff. Ended up talking with the guy. We ended up raising some money to kind of revitalize the garden, partnered with a social entrepreneurship organization, ended up getting the funding, dug a well, got in the 5 months I was there, got the garden from literally a patch of dirt to actually like growing stuff. That really just made me really passionate about like social entrepreneurship and sustainability. And sustainability was also something that like touched a lot of different areas. So I'm kind of someone that likes to have like a high level macro view of
Where
a
you're
lot
going.
of different, yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like too locked in on one very niche field. I wanted
Yeah.
to give myself options. So that experience combined with just what I learned about myself studying abroad made me want to do sustainability after that. Yeah.
Interesting. How would you define sustainability for a 5-year-old watching who doesn't know what sustainability is? And you said there's different things you can do with sustainability, right?
Yeah.
In the future, what are some like top roles that you can have as a sustainability engineer?
Yeah. So I'm not actually not on the engineering side. I'm actually working more in the corporate sustainability.
Okay.
So like the combination of business and sustainability. So
Okay.
I would ultimately define sustainability as basically kind of creating a world where we're not overusing the natural capacity of the resources, right?
Okay.
And so, and that can be at a macro level if we're talking about the entire globe, or at a community level, and basically creating systems that are sustainable, that last, that are durable, and that aren't prioritizing short-term profit and short-term gains over long-term longevity, right?
Interesting. I want to ask you more questions about this, but maybe later.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I mean, like, personally, I really like the combination of sustainability and business, because I think ultimately we live in a capitalistic society, and the only way to make change is through capitalism.
Yeah.
And so I think if we can align capitalism to make it a little bit more
Sustainable.
long-term and sustainable, and there are certainly times where it just makes good business sense to not be so hyper focused on the short-term
Profits.
quarter and the profits and whatever the next shareholder meeting, and it actually makes good business sense to plan for the long term, and pay your employees well, and not extract natural resources from the communities that you work in beyond what you should be doing, and all of that stuff. A lot of times there actually is a lot of examples where you're not making a trade-off between profit and sustainability. You're actually doing one is doing the other.
Yeah.
And that's where I like to work, because ultimately I don't think we can do like a complete societal overhaul and change people's minds. I think we need to work mostly within the system. Obviously there's places where we can
Facts.
push a little bit further, but that was my thesis as to how to live a purposeful life and make a change.
Nah, bro, it makes absolutely sense for me at least.
Yeah.
So when you studied sustainability, did you was it difficult? Like, what was the hardest part of going through that process in college? And did you get any college debt? I know you said you went to a college when your mom worked at and you didn't get any debt. But when you came back and studied sustainability, was it at the same college or?
Yeah, it was at the same college. Yeah,
Okay.
so I just switched my major, and no, I luckily did not. I lived at home, and I was not paying tuition, so I was saving on room and board. I was saving on tuition,
Nice.
and I had a scholarship as well.
Blessed.
That was going straight to my bank account, so I was kind of getting paid. I kind of had it set up. Yeah, so I feel very fortunate. I was able to graduate not only with no debt, but with a small amount saved in the bank.
Nice.
And that gave me the freedom to pick a job that I was actually passionate about, rather than a job that paid the most.
Facts.
So I actually worked for a nonprofit. That was my first job straight out of college. I could have been paid more in other places, but I saw that opportunity as something that would be able to give me the skill set to maybe get a bigger opportunity down the road, and also do something in the short term that I was genuinely passionate about straight out of college, which not a lot of people can say, because a lot of people they're saddled with debt. They got to pick the highest paying job, and then they're kind of stuck in the corporate rat race after that. So
that's very, very, very true.
yeah,
wow,
so
we can't even elaborate.
it was a very big deal. Now that I think about it, in the looking back, to graduate in a good financial situation.
Yeah. In addition, I think that the choice you made too. So so how long were you at this first job? Was it difficult getting a job with your major?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit more difficult than I thought at first, but I knew it was just about getting in the door for me. Like I knew
Okay.
once I got in the door, I would be able to prove myself.
Facts.
And I I actually just didn't show up to the last semester because I already had the credits I needed to graduate,
Wow.
and I was kind of tired of college, and I wanted to start working right away.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for classes for the spring semester, and then I just didn't ended up
Yeah.
going to them, and I ended up applying for jobs. And I knew if I just didn't show up to my classes and I applied for jobs, I would force myself to get one faster.
Yeah.
That was ended up being a great decision because I was supposed to graduate in May of 2020. Obviously, with the pandemic, a lot of my classmates, they didn't get jobs for a long time after that because
Maybe because you applied earlier.
exactly. Well, so I actually started my job March 1st, 2020, right before the pandemic.
Yeah,
So I
wow.
got my job in February. I moved to New York City, and I went into the office for 4 days.
And then the pandemic.
After 4 days, my career has been remote ever since.
Wow.
So it was actually like
Yeah.
completely luck. Well, not yeah. I mean, it was lucky because obviously I didn't know that the pandemic was gonna happen, but at the same time, it was
It
just
was
me.
preparation.
Yeah, it was just me like wanting to get a job and not wait because I knew I had the credit. So I was like, why am I gonna sit
Yeah.
around taking classes just for fun?
You know,
If
that's true patience, man. You learn what to do when you
Yeah.
you don't have anything going on. That's tough. That's so tough. So fast forward today. What do you work out now? What do you work at now?
Yeah, so 2 years, I worked for like 2.5 years at that nonprofit, and then a year and a half ago, I switched to a private company. It's a startup. It's called Persephone. It's a carbon accounting platform, and so basically we measure the carbon emissions of other corporations.
Okay.
Now that's a regulatory reporting requirement in a lot of places, a lot of investors are asking for it. A lot of large purchasers like
Yes.
Walmart, Microsoft are asking for it. And so basically we bring that process into software, make it a lot more streamlined, a lot more efficient, and also bringing it into software allows you to better see the levers for reduction and where you can reduce your footprint.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I'm kind of a numbers nerd. I get excited about sustainability, climate data, working in Excel, and ultimately it was a really good fit for me to kind of build out the future of what carbon reporting is going to be. I think it's going to be a big opportunity because a lot of, like, for example, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the
Yeah.
U.S., they are going to be requiring going forward carbon numbers to also be in like the 10K filing with your financial numbers.
Wow.
And so more and more people are thinking about carbon data and financial data as kind of parallel and important for investors. And so I kind of wanted to be part of a company that was building the future of what sustainability reporting will be for decades to come.
And you thought about this while you were at the nonprofit?
Yeah, because that's why I said it was like such a good decision to join the nonprofit first, was because it gave me it's a nonprofit that's very much at the center of the climate space.
Yes.
It's very highly regarded and trusted because it's a nonprofit and everyone knows you're not going to try and rip them off, right?
Yeah.
And so people were very forthcoming and gave me a lot of information when I was there, and it also allowed me to kind of like move up really quickly because it's a nonprofit, and like, you know, you have the opportunity for upward mobility a lot of times really much faster. And so within like very, very early in my career, I was talking directly with some of the largest pension funds, asset managers in the world. They collaborate with like over 500 of the largest investors. I was working with them directly, hearing how they were thinking about climate, how they're thinking about sustainability, working with some of the largest companies in the world as well. And I kind of saw like a bird's eye view of the entire sustainability landscape there because it was so broad and not focused on one thing. And I kind of surveyed the landscape from the sky and saw, oh, this startup has a lot of potential. Ended up joining them, but again, that wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for joining the nonprofit first, and also like, obviously, I was making a lot more money in this new job, but they didn't like, they just respected the fact that I came from this like prestigious nonprofit. They weren't like looking at my previous salary. They were like, this is really valuable to us because it's valuable for us to have people that weren't in the private sector their whole lives. It's valuable to have people that were like just genuinely doing something for the betterment of
Which you
the
are.
world, which yeah,
which
we're
you
trying
are
to do. Yeah, so
That's
it was
so
actually a
cool.
pretty good career move to start nonprofit and go private sector.
Private
Actually,
sector.
yeah.
Interesting. Two questions. Do you think that you'll be in this job? Actually, just one. Do you think you'll be in this current job for the next decade?
I hope so. I mean, like if we continue growing and if we're successful, I would absolutely stay.
Do you feel more passionate about your role in sustainability here? Do you feel the same way about like how fulfilling you feel? How fulfilling you feel about this role in this startup versus the nonprofit? Like, is it the same or?
Yeah, no, I think there's upsides and downsides. Obviously, being in the nonprofit world, you have that ability. Everyone trusts you a little bit more. Like you're able to, like I said, talk to everybody, and there's this certain level of like they'll provide you with information and share things with you where that's not the case sometimes in the for-profit world. That being said, I like the efficiency and I'm pretty deadline driven, so I like how the for-profit, this startup company moves very quickly and iterates very quickly and makes mistakes, but then corrects them. So I would say, there's upsides and downsides to both.
Okay.
But yeah, I have the opportunity to work outside the country, being at a startup where there's not, like if I was at a large financial institution, that probably wouldn't work. And yeah, they've been good to me, and I like the work. And as long as we keep ticking, I'm sticking around.
Nice. Well, now that we've discussed why and how you became, I don't know how do you call your role? Is this sustainability management or what is this?
My title is I'm a climate solutions consultant for this organization. Yeah.
Nice. Well, now that we've discussed how you became a climate solution consultant.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking climate client. Okay. But yeah, now that we discussed why and how you became a climate solution consultant, let's discuss a little bit about digital nomadsy.
Yeah.
Are there any pain points? Well, I don't think that traveling would, but for you maybe, I don't know. When you started traveling and working, what were the biggest pain points that you had, if any?
Well, I would say, for one, I think the biggest challenge of there's obviously pros and cons, right? But the biggest challenge is just saying goodbye to so many people. Like to have people that you love in different places and knowing that you have to kind of split your time between them, and places that you love and wanting to be kind of everywhere at once. And obviously there's a lot of instability that comes with that, just not necessarily knowing exactly where you're going to be 6 months down the road. Just having to pack up your stuff and go to another place and then pack up your stuff again and go to another place. And saying goodbye to people in each place, it's really challenging. It can kind of wear on you. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge, but obviously we make that trade-off because of the long list of upsides as well. Yeah.
All right, let's discuss it.
Yeah.
Actually, before we discuss it, for the challenges of leaving people, do you think that's a challenge that's beneficial?
I think so because my theory is that, like, how people have a midlife crisis when they're in their 40s or 50s or whatever. My theory is that if you're living this type of lifestyle, you kind of have to constantly be questioning all your life decisions, and like everything's uncertain. So it's like, where should I go next? What should I be doing with my time? And rather than just kind of like accepting that traditional path that I talked about earlier,
yeah, that's why
you kind of have to like be questioning everything all the time. So you don't ever. I imagine a midlife crisis is somebody that like accepts the traditional path for 30 years,
without questioning,
wakes up one day and is like,
what the fuck?
No, this is not what I want to do with my life. And then like, let me throw all that out. And I feel like as living my type of lifestyle, I'm like constantly making minor adjustments. It's like, I don't like how that felt. Let's go this way a little bit. And then I don't like, that relationship. Let's go this way a little bit, and just trying to kind of adjust and optimize my life in real time rather than waiting 30 years and then being like, throw everything out, let's try it again. So I do think like that discomfort, it breeds a certain level of questioning, of self-interrogation, where you have to constantly be asking yourself, is this really what I want to be doing?
Facts.
And I think that's healthy. I think that's healthy long term. Yeah.
All right, now for everyone watching here that's not a digital nomad, what are we spoke of a long list of pros for why everyone should become digital nomads. Can you enlighten us on some of these pros that are very essential within our self-development?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, right? Like, just getting out of your comfort zone it's cliche, but like there's levels to it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
There's levels.
yeah, exactly. It's like the more you can flex that muscle of getting out of your comfort zone in one part of your life, the more it transitions to other parts of your life, right?
Facts.
And so I think that's like it's again, I hate to say it because it's so cliche, but it's the biggest one. I'll give you an example, which is like, okay, so when you are constantly out of your cultural bubble and you constantly have to question everything, if you're learning a new language, for example, there's just this constant like not knowing and this constant needing to be okay with kind of looking foolish and not being like the guy that has it all figured out, right?
Facts.
And so you quickly get so comfortable, you get comfortable in that discomfort, right? So like at first it's like, oh, I want to kind of appear like I've got this figured out, but it's like, no, as soon as I start speaking a new language, I sound like I'm 2 years old, right? And I'm not 2 years old, so that's funny, right? And so people laugh, right? But that happens all the time, every single day. And so then you get super, super, super okay with that. And what I realized is that as I started this process of learning Spanish and living in Mexico and other parts of Latin America, I started getting more comfortable speaking English because I started to give myself more patience, the patience that I was giving myself in Spanish, the understanding that I was giving myself in Spanish. And I started to say, well, why don't I give myself that patience and understanding in English as well, right? So I had this big presentation coming up. I actually had to fly back to the US for my job and give this big presentation in San Francisco at this private equity conference. I was like really nervous about it because I was like, am I ready for this? I'm kind of young in my career. Like, I'm going to be speaking to these professionals. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, if I was to have to give this presentation in Spanish, I might actually be less nervous because my expectation, the bar I was setting myself is so low that I would be like, it's okay. Like, I'm learning this thing, right?
Yeah.
So why don't I have that same attitude when I'm speaking in English? Why don't I have the same attitude of growth mindset, and I don't need to be perfect and I don't need to be 100% right now because I know that I'm going to get better. And then I adopted that mindset and I was like way less nervous for this presentation. And therefore, as you know, I performed better because I was less nervous, right?
Facts.
And so I think it just like spills over into so many parts of your life where if you're uncomfortable in one area, you're also going to be
Okay being
able being uncomfortable in other areas. And yeah, I could go on and on, but that's the big one for me. It just makes you more confident in who you are as a person because you know that you intentionally had to make these decisions to get you to where you're at.
Yeah.
And you didn't just take the easy box and go down the path that was handed to you. So it's like when someone asks you a question, like, why are you doing that? You actually have an answer. Like, you've actually had to think of an authentic reason for why you're doing that. Whereas before, when I was kind of like living the tradition, and also I was younger, but like, I think still a lot of people have that immaturity, even though they have our age.
Yeah, dude.
It's like, why are you doing that? It's like, well, I haven't really questioned that. I don't really know. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that, you know?
You're gonna make me cry, bro. Your edit is so good. All right. Now that we discussed this, let's talk a little bit about digital nomadism.
Yeah.
As we mentioned in the beginning, your friend that came from the Dominican Republic of Congo realized that many Americans don't have passports. As stated, it's 2/3 of Americans that don't have passports. Yeah. We live in a capitalistic society. I don't want to say whether I like capitalism or not. I think that it works because if you're making profit, it means you're solving a solution.
Yeah.
But do you think that it could also be the reason why 2/3 of Americans don't have passports, or related to the reason why 2/3 of Americans don't have passports?
Probably. I mean, I don't know if I'm going the same path that you're going, but I think probably the fact that people are so obsessed with their jobs, and a lot of jobs require you to be in person. Um, and when you ask someone in the U.S. what do you do, it's clear that you're talking about what their career is,
Yes.
right? Not what they'd like to do for fun, like
Yeah.
kind of is here. And so, yeah, I mean that's probably a big part of it is people just feel like if I am traveling, if I'm spending a significant amount of time outside of the country that's not necessarily for a business trip, then am I going backwards in my career, or am I fulfilling who I am as a person? Because so many people have their identities wrapped up in what their job is.
That's very true. I don't know. Do you think that more people that are digital nomads end up becoming digital nomads because they pursue doing the things they love doing?
Do more people become digital nomads because they pursue the things? Yeah, I mean, I think, well, there's a couple types of digital nomads. Like, there's the people that, like, were like, I want to be a digital nomad. Let me find a remote job so that I can do that. And then there's the people that, kind of like me, where I was like, oh, I have a remote job. Like, I should take advantage of this, you know? And then there's people that are freelancers. I think, like, honestly, there's a lot of, like, I haven't found a ton of people. I'm pretty, like, invested still in my job and my career. I think a lot of digital nomads are just kind of, like, they have a job that pays them, but they don't really care about it, and it's more
Yes.
of a way to pay the bills
Yes,
so that they
yes.
can travel more.
Yes, yes.
I'm not really like that, just because I kind of need a purpose in everything I do, and if I'm traveling just to travel, I actually feel like pretty empty and
Yeah.
lost after like 2 days. Like, that's my limit of just
Yeah.
like free travel doing nothing. But that just kind of probably is me and like where
No, that
I
makes
where I
sense.
grew up, and who I am as a person. But yeah, I mean, the cool thing about being a digital nomad is there's a lot of different types of people that do a lot of different things, and there's not really one mold that you have to fit into. So
All right. But as a digital nomad, you can confirm that you do gain more perspective, which means that you see the world through better lenses, right?
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, now that we've discussed why and how you became a digital nomad and some pros and cons of being a digital nomad, is there any life philosophy that you live by, which you would share with someone that's like you or growing up, that they can take with them to be like you or better?
Yeah, I have a couple life philosophies. The first one that comes to my mind is to try to be comfortable in as many situations as possible. I kind of talked about this earlier, but what I mean, and like be authentically myself in as many different situations as possible. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of people, they're like socially accepted or cool or whatever name you want to attach to it, but in a certain dynamic, in a certain social setting
Where they're comfortable.
where they're comfortable, and they've like optimized for that
Comfort.
social setting specifically,
Yes.
right? But then you put them in a different culture, or speaking a different language, or on a different country, whatever. You take them out of that social setting, and all of a sudden they're kind of a fish out of water. They don't know how to react.
You know-
They're unable to effectively communicate. They're unable to. They're no longer that cool person, or that person that fits in, right? And so I kind of had this idea where it's like, what if, obviously it's an unobtainable goal because there's too many cultures and too many places to visit where you can really, you don't have enough years of your life to truly understand
Immerse, yeah.
and immerse yourself and fit in. But it's like, that's kind of an impossible goal that I like to strive to. It's like, no matter where I am or who I'm talking to, what type of person, what type of background they have, I'd like to feel like I'm authentically myself, and that I'm able to connect with them in some sort of way.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who they are, right? Because I think you can learn a little bit from every single person. And if you only are comfortable interacting with a certain type of people, you're only going to extract knowledge from that certain type of person.
Yes.
And the knowledge system of the world is too grand, too infinite to be able to limit yourself to just one type of person,
Yeah.
right? And so I feel like that ability to be able to relate and have empathy and connect with people, no matter what their socioeconomic background, no matter what their race, what their gender, whatever, as long as you're able to connect with a human being as a human being, your life is just going to be so much more full and rich because you're going to learn so much from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like my goal is like continue to put myself in situations that I've never been before so that I can kind of throw myself in the water, learn how to swim real quick, and then be okay in that situation. So the more I can continue expanding that comfort zone, the better.
Nice. You know, it's not easy getting or convincing people to get out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you think it will be the world will be better if we had more digital nomads? And how?
Yeah, I think more conscious digital nomads who really understand the culture and try to not necessarily live in their own bubble. Because I think like there's probably a lot of digital nomads that are doing this because that's what's comfortable to them, and they're living amongst only digital nomads, and they're not learning the language, and they're not understanding the culture.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can break down those cultural barriers and like just connect with each other as people. I shared with you, like when I came to Oaxaca for the first time, I knew I wanted to learn Spanish. That was my goal. So I intentionally tried to avoid other digital nomads and really just interact with the local people for an extended period of time, which worked really well. But I think the more people can do that, then the more, not only will it be better for the local communities where they travel, but it'll be better for the people that are doing the traveling because they will grow much more than they would if they were just sitting around people that are like them, right?
Wow.
So I think it's a double-edged sword. Like obviously there are a lot of challenges in places like Mexico City, Portugal, Bali with like gentrification, prices going up, locals not being happy with the digital nomads. And I think the problem necessarily isn't this trend. It's
Conscious travel.
the consciousness. Yeah, it's the lack of consciousness that some people have and the arrogance that some people have coming from a Western country, going to the developing world because it's cheaper and just wanting to get all the benefits without having to do any of the work themselves.
Yes.
So I caveat that, but I think like as long as you're doing this consciously, as long as you're doing it the right way with the right intentions, of course, you're going to grow so much as a person, and that's going to make the world better because the more people that we have who are conscious,
Living consciously.
living examined lives.
Living examined life.
The better. Yeah.
Wow. Man, dude, you've dropped so many gems on this episode, bro. I can't thank you enough for sharing your perspective.
Yeah.
And it's been a really great pleasure having you on this podcast. So thank you.
That was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keep sharing wisdom with everybody.
Thank you, bro.
All right.
This is exactly what I need.
Do I need to do anything here? Turn it off?
Turn it off.
No. Just press it again?
Yeah, just hold it.
Okay.